Welcome, everybody. Good to see you again on this very happy Tuesday afternoon. It's been a Tuesday afternoon. I know that you're saying, hey, that wasn't Carla's voice that I just heard.
It was.
No, it was not Carla's voice. In the studio today, we have Pastor Greg Stinson, newly titled Pastor Greg Stinson. Yep. So congratulations for that. Greg, if you don't know, is a part of our worship team. He's also part of the staff here at Monaz, and he's one of those guys who does a lot of things. Primarily, he's been responsible for recovery ministries, and we'll talk about that going forward. But he's one of those guys who, when you give him something to do, he just gets it done. That's really kind of who this guy is. But he's got an amazing testimony, and I thought I couldn't think of anybody better to bring into the studio to follow Bud Pugh. Bud Pugh was on with us last week. And I think he's heading to Nampa probably this week if he's not gone already. But we brought him in to do an interview, kind of an opportunity for him to reflect on his time here at ORPAC and what's going to be taking place in the future as he goes to Nampa First Church. And I thought, man, how do you follow that up? Because, talking about a guy who's really loved on the district. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I can't think of anything better than a guy like you to come in and share your testimony. So we'll get to that. But first of all, congratulations. Greg is now Pastor Greg. He received his district license this year through district assembly, even though we didn't have a live district assembly. All of the motions still went in, and so you got your district license. How does that feel? That's a big deal. I remember when I got mine. That is a big deal. And I know you're going to give all the glory to God, but you still had to put the work in. So how's it feel now, Pastor Greg?
Still getting used to that.
Yeah.
In fact, I went around into the church the other day, and Pastor Daniel was walking around, and I go, "Hey, how you doing, brother?" "Oh, okay, brother." "Oh, wait a minute, Pastor Daniel."
That's right.
Pastor Greg.
Right.
Yeah. It's very humbling, very exciting. I wasn't expecting it because of just a whole bunch of different things with the COVID thing going on. Wasn't expecting it until next year. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can't think of anybody that I personally know who deserves it more. Deserves probably the wrong word, because you probably have no idea what you're getting into. Nobody becomes a pastor because they think it's a good idea, and if they do, they quickly learn that it's not. Mm-hmm. And nobody goes into the ministry to make money. Let's take a minute here, Brother Greg, because we're changing the format of how we do this, right? Mm-hmm. it's been a live kind of interaction where we say hi to people. And for those of you on, we will say hi to you and we'll do those things as well. But we're trying to kind of get away from that interactive thing. And we've noticed that as COVID continues, right? And as the pandemic, just continues to, let me rephrase that. As we see governors and states and organizations continue to deal with this pandemic the way they are, we find ourselves still isolated. But people are getting more used to that, and they're becoming it's not as important, I think, to have the interactive time. I think it's important. So, and that's why we're still keeping our morning prayer. That's not going anywhere. Pastor Daniel's going to keep doing that. But this, it becomes so much to do every night, even with different people doing it. So, I know that the Carikas did it last night, and that's probably the end of that. There's not going to be one tomorrow with Shelley and Missy, but unless they want to, they can do it. But that's not going to be taking place. And then on Friday, we have the live stream service with Spanish Ministries, which you're a part of, and we can talk about that later too. But Thursday, Carla and I will be doing this as well. But the format's going to change. It's not going to be so much of an interactive thing as much as it is trying to get people in here to interview. And I want to make an announcement real quick. I had a discussion with our district superintendent, Dave Anderson. He's agreed to come on. And so I'm waiting just to hear from the date that works for him is when he's going to come on. But since we have you, Greg, and you kind of know the format, let's say hi to some people. What do you think?
Hola.
So they don't get all hurt and that kind of thing. So we'll get Debbie Stedman, great to see you. Good to see you with us. James Jarvis says hello to all of God's children. Pastor Roxana, how you doing, chica? You doing good?
I heard it was her birthday today.
It's always her birthday. Did you not know that? And if you watch the
You're
live
agreeing
stream,
with that?
No, not just in theory, just to keep her happy. But no, it's not her birthday. No. I refuse to acknowledge that in reality that it is actually her birthday, as much as she'd like it to be that. Aaron Boss says, good evening, y'all. Another guy involved in our Spanish ministries. There's two, Pastor Roxana and Aaron Boss, who plays on that worship team, is also getting trained and going to be responsible for some of the live streaming that happens. Scott Kaiser, how's it going, Scott? Did you know, Greg, Scott's running for mayor?
I saw that.
Yeah, it's an official thing.
I saw his letter on his website there, or his Facebook. That was really exciting to see.
And Scott, I should say, because I'm seeing behind your head right now, the new sign. And I don't know, Marcus, I hate, now that you've got everything perfectly aligned, yeah, you can. No, go ahead, Marcus, stay in there. You don't have to come in. We'll
just
do it
stand up and put my head in the center.
But we want to thank Josh Nichols for making that sign, that plexiglass, that Monaz Media Network sign. We have a new logo, and Josh Nichols and Shelley, myself, we're kind of responsible for, that was remember the original one when it was in the teal color. That was just something I put together, but then Josh and Shelley took it and made it really, really good. And they got that in here, and it's, of course, backlit and everything, and that looks nice. Hey, Marcus, do me a favor, hit the light. See if that comes up, what it looks like with the lights off. See what that's going to be like. You can't do that?
I'm not sure if I'll lose power.
Okay, so we'll work on that. I have pictures of that. I'll show you another time. So let's get back to saying hi. Scott Kaiser is in the house. Debbie Stedman. Linda Hopkins is with us. Great to see you. Josh Nichols, who I just told you about, made that sign. He says good evening. Ashley Faye Fleming, Pastor Daniel's lovely and talented wife, is with us, and she says, hi, church. We need to be praying for Pastor Daniel and Ashley. They're having some decisions that are having to be made, and we need to be with them and let them know that we partner with those guys. And those. Oh, Greg, you don't know this, but it's my favorite person. You have no idea the joy. It's Charlotte Pence Garrick-Agoidia. Carla's not here to say it, but she's probably watching, dear. And as you know, Brother Greg, Charlotte always puts down the canasta. She gets away from the mahjong just so she could come in and be a part of the live stream. And so, Charlotte, we want to welcome you. And Sadie Ingram, remember Sadie?
Oh, yeah.
Remember Trevor and Sadie, who used to be with us in ministry? They are joining. Sadie, is Trevor with you? I'm just curious. Well, we're 5 minutes behind already in comments, Greg.
Oh, great.
So we got some making up to do. But
you know, I can't see that well, so I'm gonna have to put on my glasses. And let's see here.
Oh,
there we go.
that's right.
I can see a lot better now.
It's a knock on Carla. I wonder what Gabby would think about that. That Pastor Greg just made a knock on that. Gabby, what do you think? Yeah. I know. I love it. That's well done, Marcus. On the cues, ready to go. But woohoo, Pastor Greg, she says, hey, look, it's my son, Ryan Joyner. And you guys used to know him, or you know him as Ryan Marshall, but you guys, most of you have heard the adoption story, and he has changed his name.
I saw that, man. I couldn't watch that without like bawling myself. That was a really neat Father's Day gift.
It was the best. You should have been there. I
yeah.
couldn't not do. I was crying my eyes out
Yeah.
just reading the letter. What's amazing to me is even reading the letter, I had no idea that that's what was going to come from it. I had no clue. And so it was great. Ryan, it is great to see you. He says he loves you, Pastor Greg. It says, hey,
that's
PG,
awesome.
love you, bro. 2 drummers, right?
Yeah.
2 drummers. We got to get.
I still want to. Yeah, I want to still hear him play. I really haven't fully heard him play ever.
He can play. Ryan's one of those guys who's just Ryan and Mia both my kids. They're naturally gifted. You put an instrument in front of them, and they kind of have it. Ryan, despite what he tells you, his best instrument is actually bass. But that's not really. I think he likes playing drums more, and so he plays drums more. But he's an exceptional bass player, and he's got a really nice. It's a Warwick bass out of Bubinga. It's the heaviest guitar I've ever held in my life. But Ryan, it is great to see you. I'm guessing Gabby's asleep. Probably she's working tomorrow. And Ryan found out he's going back to work. The pandemic, the restaurant where he works at, Duffy's down in South Florida, is opening up. So he's going to be headed back to work. So that's good. Sandy Story says, howdy from Brian and Sandy.
What about me?
Oh, well, let's see it. Let's everybody in the studio. I guess I forgot to tell everybody about this, but brother Marcus Story in the studio with us. Marcus, let's see what you look like today. Let's see. Come on.
Okay,
there he is.
Fine.
And now he's got a microphone so we can hear him.
You did this to me, everybody.
I did do this to you, and I'm happy. We'll do it again. And if you didn't get a chance to see Marcus's promo video of our need for help, that was fantastic. On Sunday, I took it today and put some music to it and gave all the contact information and put it on Facebook earlier. So if you didn't see that, you can go back and see that.
It's on the YouTube page. It is absolutely hilarious. I love it.
It's on YouTube. Is it not also on Facebook? Marcus and I are fighting over control of the mouse. Go ahead, Marcus.
Let me turn off my webcam. People don't need to see me right now.
But Brian and Sandy, Marcus's parents, say hello. Who is, scroll back up there, Marcus. Who is, because it says that the Malala Church of the Nazarene is saying hi to Pastor Roxana. Who's controlling that? Because that would be us. And I didn't type that. Did you type that?
No, it says commented on by Ashley Faye Fleming, it looks like.
So Ashley Faye is at home representing the church, who is right here. That's awesome. Ashley Faye, if you don't know, kind of heads our Facebook page and takes care of a lot of the posts that you see there. So thank you, Miss Ashley. It is great to see you with us, too. Julie Cordall is here. She wishes you all kinds of congratulations, Pastor Greg. The Soup Nazi is in the house. Mrs. Soup Nazi, probably Mr. Soup Nazi is there. Shannon Wise is with us saying good evening. The sign does look amazing. Everybody's liking the sign. Brian Story says he loves you, Pastor Greg. Ashley Nye says it's her first time catching it live in the studio. Ashley is Ashley's one of those people, being a part of the worship team, who's, Ashley's kind of a cool story. Just briefly, Ashley came to the church, I think started coming about a year ago, came and sat in on a Know Your Church class and took her through the Know Your Church class, and she loved it and she wanted to join. And one thing or another, it just kept being pushed. Either we didn't have the class or didn't have enough people, those kind of things. And literally the week that we were going to do, remember we were going to do baptisms and bring people into membership. I think we had like 12 or 14 people to come into membership. Ashley's one of those people. And then the pandemic hit and we weren't able to do it. So I got permission from the district to bring people into membership as well. So she is a member. Not that matters, but, and then I started following her on Facebook, and she would put videos of herself singing up there. She's probably just loving me telling everybody this now. They're all going to go stalk her Facebook page and listen to her sing.
I've heard some of them.
Really yeah. And so I heard that, and I was playing it for Carla, and we were like, why is she not on the worship team, right? So I mentioned it to Tim, I mentioned it to Ashley, and she's been 2 or 3 times now. She's sung with the worship team live, something you're part of. And so how's she fitting in? How's she doing on that?
I think she's doing great. As anything, it's just getting used to being up there. Even with me, I've been playing over 35 years and still getting used to some things,
Oh, yeah.
It's just, but she's doing great, taking great instruction from Brother Tim and stuff.
Yep.
I always thought it'd be interesting if we also got Ashley Fleming and maybe a couple other Ashleys up there and just make it a band of Ashleys.
Yeah, we could just turn it into the Ashley Band.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Ashley Fleming, who can also play guitar, right? In
Yeah.
addition to that,
Yeah.
also can sing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of people who can sing who are like, I think about even Sedona, Andrew's wife,
Oh, yeah.
whose work schedule has prevented her from being a part of the worship team. Another excellent singer that we need to get back involved. All right, getting back into it. So Ashley, welcome. We're glad that you're being able to catch it in the new studio, and you've already made a difference on the worship team. We're great to have you. Missy Marshall, who is here.
I actually seen her.
Yeah, she and Linda Fender were doing the count. And so, Missy, it is great to see you. Mike Keller says, pastors in hats, looking good. Hey, I'm just representing the Gators. Go Gators, right? Ryan Joyner, go Gators. Go Gators. Where's the camera? There's go Gators. Go Gators.
I always thought that meant baby gator, gator, gator.
Listen. One day your Ducks will win a national championship. Maybe. You know, just hey, you beat the Beavers most of the time, so be happy with that. All right, but Ashley loves the sign. Mike Keller says hi to Dana. Dana Wynn is here. Dana, if you don't know, is the guy who's been cleaning the church for us in between our services. Thank you, Dana, for that. Boo, it keeps freezing. Probably her internet. PT, you're looking particularly cool tonight. What is it? Is it the Gator? Is this? I wasn't going for cool.
I never see you wear a hat.
I don't wear them a lot, but I played golf yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah, with Pastor Max.
Oh.
Max Jatan, who was the pastor here 2 pastors ago. He was the pastor of this church. And when the first few years when I was here as an associate, he and his wife were still coming. But great guy, but he invited me. He's been inviting me a lot. And I haven't been able to do it, so I didn't want to keep turning him down, so I played golf with him yesterday. And I had my hat on. And I don't know, it was just there in the car, and I said, I'll bring it in. So it wasn't like intentional, but Scott Kaiser thinks that we look cool, and apparently Mike Keller thinks that we look cool too. Pastors in hats.
Well, you gotta look cool, especially with that shirt you're wearing. I mean,
is it the shirt?
You'd never go wrong with Jurassic Park.
No, I guess not. I guess.
I got to just wear my cowboy hat one time, and the worship team just throw everything off, you know.
Well, that would be awesome.
I would pay to see that.
I have a hat in my office. I have 2 cowboy hats in my office. Don't go get them. One is in my closet, and the other's hanging up. But we could have. But I like when we start a new series or pastors in hats.
Yeah.
We'll just bring all the pastoral staff in,
Drinking coffee.
and with pastors in hats, like the Netflix comedy with Jerry Seinfeld. Yes, pastors in hats drinking coffee, or in your case, Powerade. Right? Is that what that is?
Yeah, because doesn't Pastor Daniel wear a hat too? And he'll be there with his French press, and you'll have your Keurig. And
He doesn't wear hats a lot. I have seen him in a hat. But he's always drinking coffee. That's right. So for sure. All right. So Mr. Soup Nazi Roger is here. Tim Friesen says, great sign. We are 6 minutes behind. Ryan Joyner, that's not true. Ryan Joyner says that he would love to play, talking about drums.
Uh-huh.
Tim Friesen offered Ryan the opportunity to play with the worship team while they were here. And Ryan was like, no, I'm tired. It's like, what? You know, so I don't even hear that. PG, look forward to meeting you someday. Scott's looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah.
Scott, when you hear his testimony, which we'll get into in just a few minutes, you're going to be just blown away by this guy's story. It truly is. It's such a great story. I wanted to bring him on and share that testimony. So let's catch up real quick with saying hi to people, and then I want to get into that. Jean Ansell says, good evening, Miss Jean. We love you. Hope you're doing well. We'll be praying for your hip. Mike Keller liked the promo video. Charles Hanson, remember Charles Hanson?
Yep.
Who used to be in ministry with us, is now doing ministry out down in Texas, outside of Waco, Texas. He says the studio is looking great. Thank you, Charles. Shelley Watt and Mark Ruby, Josh Nichols made that sign. So good things. Mr. Free, I got to do this hand now. Mrs. Free, good to see you. Is the youth group taking pop can donations yet? You know what, Debbie, honestly, I don't know. I'm sure that if you bring some by the church, we can set them aside. I know that is something that they do. So if you want to bring some by the church, I'll make sure that they get to the right people. I can promise you that. Everybody's liking the sign. So Josh Nichols, great job with that. Jane Wolf says hello to Sadie. The worship team at Monaz has always been second to none. I agree. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but, you know, I mean, that was something I did for a while.
Yeah, I guess it's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. You know, Well, now that Tim's gotten it, he's taken it to a whole nother level. So, I mean, that's a pretty cool scenario. Ashley says, thank you guys. I feel blessed to be a part of the worship team, learning so much, and there are many talented people in the church family. I agree. Ashley, I will tell you, I've been in worship ministries, and you've been in worship ministries a long time, both of us. I mean, I've said before, I've never had such a gifted group of musicians in a church this size, ever. It is amazing to me. And so I'm not asking you to, because you may have played with much better people, but for me, it hasn't happened.
Well, we've been tremendously blessed, yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. Mike Keller says the cool comes from the Jurassic Park shirt. Jewel King is with us. Hello, Miss Jewel. I thought PT shirt said Jurassic Pastor. My bad. A cowboy theme would be awesome. I didn't recognize you at first, Pastor Todd. I was trying to figure out the voice. Finally, the slow memory kicked in. What is it? Is this better?
See, I'm the reverse. The only time people usually see me without the hat is when I actually am on the stage. Otherwise, I have it on all the
Yeah,
time.
you're almost always wearing a hat. Is this better? See, that's not comfortable. I don't like seeing with the headphones on. It doesn't work. That's why I had it backwards.
Yeah.
So we'll go back to this. So
There's no crying in Pastor.
there's no crying. Yes, there is. Let me assure you, there is. There is quite a bit. It looks like Chris Wallace is in the studio.
Hello, Brother Chris. You know, Chris is used to doing this. He's got that voice, and it came from radio.
It wasn't always. In fact, when he first started radio, it was like this.
And then his voice just got deeper.
Chris, what is going on? All right, so guys, it is 7:20, and like I said, the format is different. There is not a devotion today. We will probably get into some prayer, but if we don't, that's okay. Really, what I wanted to do today is let those of you who don't know him, and maybe some of you who do know him, really get to hear Pastor Greg's testimony, because it's an amazing testimony. And if you have questions as he's sharing his testimony, go ahead and put them in there. And Marcus in the studio, I'd ask you to make note if you see a question, maybe write it down in case we missed it. Thank you for that, bro. My son says, Ryan says, Dad, with the hat forward and headphones on, you look like a Division character. Yeah, I agree. The Division is a video game that my son and I play. So, Greg, why don't we just go like this? We'll turn the camera over to you. And why don't you just start? I mean, I know your testimony, and a lot of us do, but for those who don't, and there's no limit, you take as long as you need. But remember, we don't want to put people to sleep. So, we'll do those kind of things. But just, I don't want to say briefly share your testimony, but share those things in your testimony that get you to the point to where you're Pastor Greg Stinson. Mm-hmm. So go for it.
Well, ironically, it starts at birth. So how long do we have again?
We've got as much time as you need.
I'm just kidding. It literally actually does. I was born in Newport, Oregon, about 2 weeks after I was born. My birth mother decided to give me up for adoption. There was other siblings, and she was having a hard time taking care of me. The father had left and everything.
Right.
And that played a role later on in life that I didn't realize till actually recently. And so, sorry, blanked out by Marcus.
I'm sorry. Marcus and I are finagling things off camera that no one can know about. I'm sorry, Brother Greg.
That's
My
all
distraction.
right.
Go ahead.
I like
Continue.
it. Now I know what it's like on this side of the camera.
That's right. It's a totally different game.
So now my adoptive family, just been totally awesome. I love my mom and my family and everything. I was always in the loop that I was adopted and stuff. And the only reason why I know a little bit of what I know is that the birth mother thought of trying to keep me. That's why she kept me for 2 weeks and slipped a note in the baby bonnet. And
wow.
And I think from what my sister says that they met once. But a lot of the information, of course, came from the foster mother. Back in a time, this is back in 1969, I just dated myself, that it was all red tape and stuff. So I go through my adolescence, and I felt back then that I really didn't fit in. It was like I would get teased a lot just because I'm a big guy. My complexion was different than anybody else. I grew up in Canby. So it was just a little different. And so I want to say when I was 9 years old, my adoptive dad had a major stroke that affected his power of speech and reasoning. at the onset of that, it was really tumultuous. It affected his ability to reason for a while, and so um, I just didn't know how to deal with that.
Was he
So,
older?
yeah, he was. Well, see, my to back up just a tiny bit, my mom had said that the reason why she adopted me is they just didn't feel complete. A year before I was born, her biological son had died of pancreatitis, or no, his appendix bursted, excuse me. And so they had, that's kind of why they had adopted me. And so, um, so they were like my sister, my adoptive sister is 13 years older than I am. My brother is 12 years older. So, um, my mom is now 86 years old, but gets around like she's still in her 50s.
Right.
I
Well, she's been here a few times. I mean,
Yeah.
we've met your mom. We've
Yeah,
interacted with
yeah.
her.
So, throughout that and all this confusion, I think born an identity issue. I just didn't know where to belong, where to fit in. Um, Normally, having a male figure, it just wasn't there. My brother was already kind of getting out of the house. However, I credit him for me kind of getting into music. I'd always hear music coming from his room. And my mom kind of took attention to that and bought me a drum set in between my 6th and 7th grade year, I think it is.
Right.
It was a Christmas gift. And so from there, I really got into the 80s genre of music and
The
stuff.
best music there is.
Yeah,
There's nothing like 80s music. 70s was good.
yeah.
I think the 80s was better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I believe it or not, I did have hair once.
I believe it.
I've got to post pictures of that sometime. It was down to the middle of my back.
Yeah.
Now it just grows out here and goes poof. And so, you know, and ironically, because of that, my sister's former husband, he was in the Navy, and he did. If anybody knows what Westpac tours are, they basically go out to sea for 6 months in a certain area of the world. Excuse me, and he came back and he got saved while he was out there.
Right.
And he gave me a tape of a guy named Daryl Mansfield, which is a Christian artist. Locally here, his sister was either dating or married to a guitar player who plays in a local band called Saint. They're still together. I just found out they put out a new album. They're a Christian band out of Salem. And so, of course, they're both, you know, Daryl Mansfield was more bluesy, Saint's more rock. So I kind of got into that and got into Christian music that way.
Right.
Got into knowing people that were Christians, but thought, you know, that's a good place to try to latch on to. But I still did not accept Jesus, did not know what that was. Throughout all my high school years, I just didn't feel like I fit in. I did get into drama and band.
Let me ask you a question. Why? What was it that you would say? Why didn't you feel like you fit in? I mean, was it typical high school stuff? Like, I mean, you know, every high school kid, adolescent kid doesn't feel like they fit in, and that's a pretty normal thing. For you, what was there a particular reason?
I think part of it is I was a chicken. I mean,
I can't imagine that
not-
this big guy like
Not
you
a-
know. You are, no, listen, for sure you are a gentle giant. That's exactly a great description of you.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine you being chicken. See what happened when the camera's off? The hat, it all comes off. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just seen on there, so there you go. Yeah, no, that was part of it. Part of it is I just, you know, I think my brother tried a little bit, but he was trying to go to college and do his own life to just teach me things that a guy would normally do.
Right.
I was kind of reclusive, you know, just inward to myself for a while. I had just maybe 2 friends. One of them was a guitar player, which we kind of played music with each other throughout high
Sure.
school and stuff. It wasn't until my junior year that I got the courage to join band that I started kind of figuring out socially different things.
Right.
I had, you know, I actually started having a girlfriend here and there, but from early on, I just did not know how to even be a boyfriend or anything like that. I distinctly remember being called names because I wasn't, you know, in the social norm. You know, the
Right.
peer pressure of things like that. I met my first wife through high school, and we were married shortly after I got out. But my issues that stayed with me from all the way back when my dad had a stroke and trying to figure out who I am. I had trust issues and all this stuff. I was one of the biggest jerks you could ever think of.
Wow.
Our marriage ended up in divorce, and I remember figuring out things I did wrong and stuff like that. But I was starting to drink a little back then.
Now, how old were you?
This would have been like 21, 22.
Okay.
Yeah. We had 2 children together, and one of them, ironically, is an Ashley. By the way, I have 2 Ashleys. That'll come later.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So I always knew that there's this Native American side to me. So I figured, maybe I'll search that out. I'll figure out who I am through that. I had a friend who worked on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. I was ignorant to the fact that Indian tribes are so different from one another, so I went over there thinking that I would know everything about Indians. I also got a job with a police department back there, and me and my first wife tried to reconcile.
So this is in your early 20s?
Yep, all my early 20s.
Okay, so we're talking pre-25.
Yeah.
And you're 50 right now?
51.
51. Okay. All right. So I just want to stay with the timeline. So you're trying to reconcile with your first wife.
Yeah.
You joined the police force.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a connection with the Native American culture.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then it quickly, I just had more of an identity issue because each Indian tribe is unique within itself. They have their own language, and so
Right.
basically each reservation has 3 or more tribes upon it. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, which one do I belong to,
Sure.
or do I even belong here?
Okay. So
Yeah.
So that's something that didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So something biologically in you, you knew to be Native American.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I knew that, but for the sake of our listeners, I'm trying to put that together.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were born with a certain percentage of you don't know what,
Mm-hmm.
that was Native American, and you did at this point you didn't know what tribe or any affiliation.
Yeah.
You just knew that there was some form of Native American in your heritage.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. But your biological family was not Native American at all.
No.
Or your adoptive
Adoptive
family.
Adoptive family,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, what about your first wife?
No,
Okay.
no. It didn't work out basically with the reconciliation because the law enforcement, taking what the current events are kind of out of the light for a second and going back 20 some years now, it was still a tumultuous state of affairs. Went to a place that basically was very low budget with a high crime rate. And so, I was told by 50-year veterans that I did more in my first 2 weeks there than they did in their whole career. So, of course, here I've got all these issues, and now I'm trying to take all this in.
Right. And where was this?
This was in Warm Springs.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I literally just got scared, just like I always used to, and took everything, put it in a bag, put it in front of the captain's door, and just left a note and walked away.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me and the first wife were still together then, but she talked me back into it. This is within the first 3 months there. It was a few years after trying to reconcile, it just didn't work.
Right.
The rigors of that job just started to wear on me. Ironically, I noticed I became numb to things. This is on reflection. I didn't know it at the time, but I was starting to get numb to things.
Were you still drinking?
I started drinking heavier.
Okay.
It became a thing where if I was going to an event or something with a bunch of friends, it was going till I passed out, or trying different things and stuff like that. So after what was about 1998, I met my second wife. She is a Karuk Indian there. It was a very short-lived marriage.
Your second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, she did not want to have anything to have God in it at all in the marriage vow.
And,
So it's
and
kind
she
of
was Native American?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was cursed from the get-go on that one, but but I noticed my my trust issues were wandering. You know, it's like I didn't believe what she was saying and things like that. And it was another type of thing where just, they couldn't understand what I was going through. Um, I think we divorced like 2 years later, and within a year, I met the third wife. And that one I really tried to work out, but that became probably one of the hardest relationships. Nothing against her, but it was just the fact that I was getting more and more involved in law enforcement because I finally dug in and latched on to the job and kind of grew up a little bit there. I stuck with it, and I started going up the ladder really quick. I became a sergeant, and then I became a detective, and then I became working with the Central Oregon Drug Task Force, and they happened to work with all the cities and counties within the Central Oregon area, including the DEA. I started getting training from them, and then before I knew it, I was in a BIA, federal detective job. So I was seeing and doing everything there, and I couldn't go home and talk about it.
So you were having, just kind of recap, you were having some pretty good success from the standpoint of a career in law enforcement. I mean, you were seeing progression, and it was, yet your personal life is where you were having the hard time. I mean, you were in your third marriage, and now how old would you say you were, or how old were you at this point?
Oh, that would have been, well, it was around 2004, I want to say. No, it's probably around 2003, 2002. I was promoted to detective. So yeah, I would have been somewhere in the
late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, somewhere around.
Okay,
there.
so you were having some pretty good success. You're in the prime of your life as far as that goes. The drinking is still, as you said, heavier, and marriage is not working. So you're in the middle of your third marriage. You've been promoted to detective. Keep going.
Yeah. So. It just keeps going on. I had our arguments became pretty heavy. A lot of it was my stubbornness, not understanding things. I should point out my first wife and the third wife, we both lost a child through miscarriage.
Okay.
And so those are things that I just never dealt with until later on. And so I of course wasn't there for them when they went through those things, and so that has to have been one of the biggest factors, you know.
Was your third wife Native American?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So your second and third wife were both Native American from the same tribe?
Nope. The second one's from Kurok, and that's Northern California. Third one's from Warm Springs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically towards the end of that marriage, though, I had been working so much. I remember being gone for a full week in the field doing surveillance, or we'd have a fire. That place is just known for wildfires, and I'd be stuck there. I went down to Artesia, near where you used to pastor church.
In Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah, and at the Federal Law Enforcement Center there. And it was specifically for undercover narcotics investigation. I come back after a 10-hour flight, and within an hour they're calling me out for a homicide investigation.
Well, yeah, people don't know this about New Mexico, and in particular that area is heavy drug trafficking.
Yeah.
Heavy. Yeah.
So it's like there was just no breaks. I was just becoming more numb, and I was becoming more just kind of separated from feeling, I think. But then I started dealing with people I knew, and started dealing with really, really just things that you only see in a battlefield, you know, and like Iraq or something like that. But this was my backyard. You couldn't just go home because it was in your home.
Right.
By the end of me being a detective, I mean, literally all the way around me. I lived in the country, but all the way around me were people that I arrested or dealt with that were narcotics involved. And I learned through a cousin that they were kind of protecting me from them coming at me and the family at the time. So,
Wow.
So it's like its own little world in a way.
It's like a Netflix miniseries, not to make light of it, but
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
it really would be.
Well, especially through the interstate and intercontinental works with that drug team. Part of it's with the DEA, you know. we could be dealing with low-level cartels and stuff like
Right,
that. You never
right.
know. So, but towards the end of it, ironically, I worked. I always had financial problems. That was one of the biggest issues that I dealt with. I just did not know how to manage my money.
Okay.
I ended up taking a second job as security officer out at Canita, and then I ran into a couple different bands that I really liked. They could play cover tunes really awesome, and before I knew it, I was in both bands. And so I'm doing literally 3 different jobs, just burning the candle at every end.
And we all
And,
know that the music industry is just ripe with the drug culture.
yeah,
And having been in music most of my adult life, I can certainly speak
Yeah.
to that. Sure.
yeah, it got to the point where I was called the double-fisted drummer just because I'd go up on stage with 2 beers in my hand, drink them while playing, and then come off and have a couple more, and things like that. Again, I wasn't finding myself. I still felt very lost. I was just numbing everything.
Now, were you still married to your third wife?
Yes,
Okay.
at the very end there.
Okay.
This would have been around 2007, 2008. In 2008, I just said, I'd left the security job about 2 years prior to that and was primarily doing music. It was actually doing pretty good because we were playing like 4 nights a weekend. Of course, it became a huge battle with work. They didn't like the fact that they couldn't just call me out anytime until after 2 when I was done. Then I could go out and hopefully I hadn't been drinking enough. You know what I mean?
Right. I do.
And so, but I wanted more. I just, I basically back in 2007, I stole just under $5,000 from my evidence room.
Okay. Okay. Now I know the story. Talk just briefly, unless you not comfortable, but I know
That's all right.
Briefly, what got you to that point to where I know you're an intelligent guy. You're an easy guy to talk to. There's no part of you I don't like. So when I hear the story and not knowing the story, I say to myself, I just can't even fathom that. I can't see that in this person. I can't. Talk a little bit about what got you to the point to where you said, this is the right decision. The right decision for me is to do this.
Well, to actually now use our current events is pretty much what got me there. Going through all of that stuff I was going through, I still had people in the community who would say, oh, you're just going to be this. You're just going to do that. Or, I'd be blamed for the sins of officers that had been there 20 years ago and did something.
Okay.
We even went through our own little situation where they paused our budget, and I had to kind of stay there and take it. I remember a counselor one time telling me that you get told something so much that you just tend to believe it and live with it. And that's kind of what happened. I just finally said, screw it. I seen some gear I wanted, and so I took the money. Originally, I was blaming it on things because of my wife and stuff. When I look in hindsight, that wasn't where all that money went to. With the exception that my daughter, the oldest Ashley, got accepted to play volleyball in Hawaii. I guess there's this thing they do every year where girls across the nation get chosen and to play on 10 teams. And so she got chosen and her team won. So I felt bad that I didn't have money to send to her. So that's where some of that went. Believe me, when everything kind of fell apart on that and she found that out, we didn't speak for a while. But, I was just, I can't say I was totally out of my mind. It was a free will act. However, I think I would have been, had I had Jesus then and just been completely calm and stuff and been able to deal with it. I know that when it happened then, but it happened, so.
Let me jump in. I just want to remind for the people listening, if you're listening live, if you have questions for Pastor Greg, go ahead and submit them. He's wide open. He'll answer just about anything. And if you're like me, I remember when you first told me this story. Actually, when you first told me, I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to get to know you and who you are. And Greg told me this story the day I met him. and that was an amazing thing to me. But if you do have questions, I just want to remind you to put them in the comment section, and Marcus will flag them for us. And if you don't, that's okay. You can still listen, because I know it's a riveting story, and you got to be saying to yourself, "Wow, how did he get from stealing money in an evidence room to becoming a pastor?" So you go ahead and you carry on for that. I just wanted to remind the people watching.
Yeah, and even if we can't get those questions answered here today, you're always welcome to approach me anytime. So anyway, to fast forward a little bit.
Now, you haven't been caught yet.
No.
Okay.
No, in 2008, I decided to leave the police department thinking I could make it off of the monies I was making through music.
Now, how long was it from the time you stole this money to 2008 when you...
It was about a year.
Okay, so a year.
And it, for all intents and purposes, they noticed it. I can't remember when they noticed it missing, but and an investigation was underway, and they didn't really talk to me directly until actually I left the police department.
Were you concerned? I mean, were you scared? Like, wow, they're going to figure this out?
No.
Wow.
I know the law. I could have, in fact, I got to a point where I kind of went to the other side for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I deeply thought about this, and I thank God that I never went this way. But I thought, man, I know everything they do. I know what to look for.
You'd be the perfect criminal.
Yeah. And I know what the criminals do because I've been watching all this time. So I'm going. So I also knew that they decided to do a lie detector test with me. I can't remember. This had to have been. It had to have been like 2009 when they finally got around to doing that.
So you were a suspect at some point.
Yeah. I mean, they just hadn't interviewed everybody. I mean, it had gone so long. The theft actually happened in 2007. I think they noticed it same year, coming into 2008, then going into 2009. Unfortunately, there's some things that just get to a point where you have to look at the more serious incidents. But anyway.
How long? Melody Harrell is asking a question. Just curious, how long total were you in law enforcement?
13 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Melody. Appreciate that. By the way, you're getting a lot of love.
Oh.
Christine Jones says,
That's
I
awesome.
adore you, Pastor Greg. The Lord has done such a marvelous thing in your life. Thank you for being a walking testimony.
Well, that's the awesome part of Jesus,
Right.
That's if you wouldn't ask, you would have never known.
Right. So let's get there. So
yeah.
okay, so
That's
the lie detector test.
Yeah, so I didn't tell the truth right at the beginning. And something in me told me I don't think I could live with this if I just kept my mouth shut. If I kept my mouth shut, I would have never been charged or anything, because a lie detector test alone cannot prove your guilt.
It's not admissible. Right.
But it's just, a part of it is also, I mean, ironically, the two guys that were doing the test were two guys I never met before. And maybe it was meant to be that way. But I was in the FBI field office in Bend when they were doing this. So every other agent in that building, and that was also where they housed the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. A lot of them sheriff's deputies I knew. So it was like, I just can't do this anymore. So,
Right.
I mean, I thank God that happened that way. So I confessed to it. And
Wow. So okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask, or have I asked, or did you say how much money you stole?
Yeah, it was just under 4,000. I want to say, or 5,000. It was like 4,995 or something like that.
Right. Okay. So right around $5,000.
Yeah.
So you're feeling the pressure on some level. You're having to take lie detector tests. There's clearly you're a suspect on some level.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, had you remained silent, probably you would have gotten away with it, or you know. But something prods you to open up and confess this.
Mm-hmm.
And so go from there. So you go to who? Who do you go and who do you confess to?
Well, it was to the agents right there in the building.
Okay.
And then here's another ironic thing is I'd never really stopped being involved around Christians. The band members that I played with in Bend also attended a church in Bend called New Hope, and I actually got to play on their team. And I thought, well, this is cool.
Yeah.
And I thought I knew what God was then, but I was trying to live the best of both worlds, you know. one side didn't see the other, kind of. Jekyll and Hyde really is what it was.
Right.
So when I began to talk to some of the people about this, when I could, I wasn't allowed to talk to some people about this yet because they were still investigating other things. And so,
Well,
so-
okay.
yeah.
Did they arrest you right there on the spot, or?
No, basically, I got a summons, and I got what they call a pre-trial probation guy, and I had to go appear in federal court in Portland, and then do a plea, and then they do a sentencing hearing,
Okay.
and then that's when I got sentenced. And this would have been now right at the beginning of 2010.
Okay, so it wasn't like
Yeah.
you go and you confess to these agents,
Mhm.
and they're like, they read you your rights, put handcuffs on you, and take you to jail.
No, no,
Wow. Okay.
no.
Okay.
Um,
We do have another question. I told
yeah.
Debbie, the answer to your question is going to come in his testimony. So Debbie's asking how and what brought you to stop drinking.
Oh, okay.
And so you don't have to answer that now. Just get to that
Yeah.
in your testimony. So Debbie, I just want to let sure you know we will get to that answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So carry on. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I had no problem with the questions. And so, yeah, I basically, at that point, I felt like I was just walking the earth because one thing this did was alienate anybody I did know or was close to in law enforcement. There's still some people that stuck by my side, of course, but, you know, the closest partner I had, he just couldn't handle it after about a year. I just didn't feel like I was going to be truthful
Sure.
or anything. So,
What about your wife?
well, by this time we had already been separated. I was living already by my own.
Okay.
And at the end of 2000, in July of 2009, I was already out of the house by the time I even confessed this. So,
Okay. All right. Okay.
yeah. So I want to say.
So life was spiraling.
Oh yeah, it was starting to spin. One thing that, unfortunately, and I'm sure a lot of the officers today still go through, is, and it's just like the military, they teach you everything in a class how to deal with situations except for how to deal with life issues.
Right.
And so, yeah, I kept finding things to try to fill gaps, music and booze, music and booze. Well, in June of 2010, literally 10 years ago to the day, I went into federal prison in Washington. When I come out 3 months later, here's the interesting thing: they weren't going to put me in federal prison; they were just going to let me do 3 years probation. My judge was a Marine.
Okay.
High ethical standards.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
So I come out, literally, I was so excited because I knew this was going to happen. I literally come out that week, and I was able to go to the Pendleton Roundup and play with a band, the country band I was in, and also open up for Darryl Worley and all this stuff. But I noticed that felon part of me. It was growing.
Right.
There was some kid that was doing some stuff to our gear, and I remember going and grabbing him by the neck. I'm a felon. I have nothing left to lose.
Right.
I mean, I remember that starkly, just nothing left to lose. And it scared him. And he came back the next day and helped clean things up.
Wow. So okay. So you serve your time.
Mm-hmm.
You get out. You're playing in a gig. You see some guy messing with your stuff,
Yeah.
and you go and you kind of aggressively confront him.
Yeah.
And that was real for you.
Yeah.
So that wasn't just like, I'm gonna scare this kid. That's just
Yeah.
like, that's where you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
It followed me back over here in May of 2011. I had to come back over here because, as you know, in 2008 and on, we had that recession.
Uh-huh.
Well, every contract we had was gone. I was lucky to make $200 a month.
What were you doing for a job at that point?
It was just playing the music.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't do much. And I applied for 158 jobs. I had a list of them all because I kept checking up with them. 158 jobs, didn't get an interview.
Well, and I'm sure your record at that point probably
Yeah.
negatively impacted that. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I came back over here in 2011, my mom let me come back at home. I came back at home a few times throughout this time. And, music and karaoke is what got me going. I just kept finding things to fill in the gaps. I would have on again, off again relationships, and I'd find just about every bar I could from Canby and Malala north all the way to Vancouver, Gresham, anywhere there was a band, anywhere there was karaoke. Um, I'd find groups of people. You know, that was just my life from 2011 until 2016. It was just that's just the way it was. But everything was just getting worse and worse and worse.
Right.
Um, I ended up, in fact, one of my former girlfriends happened to be going through the Fred Meyer in Canby and knew I played drums.
Right.
And so she saw a ad for this church looking for a drummer.
I remember the ad. I
Yeah.
created the ad.
Yeah. And I'm going, no, I can't go back to church. I actually even tried to apply at another church to play when I first came back over here. And, they did the right thing at that time. It was like, they wanted to get to know me. I said, how's my resume not good enough? That's just my attitude.
So
back
we're
then.
going back about 4.5, 5 years now.
This would have been October of 2016.
16. Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Mhm.
Melody is asking. She said what she says is, "Wow, federal prison." She's just curious to know, were you able to have Bible studies inside? I would add to the question, even if you did, is it something you were interested in being a part of at that time?
Yeah, in fact, it was an Assembly God pastor that I went to and would listen to his sermons and stuff.
Wow.
See, the Lord never stopped working on me through this whole time.
Right.
There was just little seeds being planted here and there.
And that was one of them.
Yeah. In fact, 2 years prior to seeing that ad, I was just Saturday night one time. I just felt like I didn't want to be in a bar. I wanted to be in a church. I walking into Oregon City Nazarene of all things. I really wish I could remember this guy because he was sitting in there talking about how his son goes to a different denomination, but he felt like God has that intended for him. And then he said, well, before I was a Nazarene, I was a Christian. And that was a big deal to me because for a while I had a chip on my shoulder. I had that same chip everybody has. Oh, they're all, hypocrites, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And so that guy put it in context and go, whoa. He's not just saying he's who he is because God brought him there through that testimony. That's all I remember him saying.
Right.
But that
Right.
impacted me that much.
You're getting some more love.
Awesome.
Brigitta Folhaber says, "Thank you for sharing your testimony, Pastor Greg. You are such a blessing to our family. You're an amazing man of God. We continually pray for you and your family, and we love you, brother." And another question from Melody: did other prisoners know that you were a cop or had been a cop?
Thank God for the undercover side of things.
Okay.
I basically, there was a certain point where I wanted to instill truthfulness back in my life, and so I basically gave him what I could. I basically told him I did steal from the tribe, but I said I stole from Canada instead of from the police department, and that I'd worked there. Now, knowing the inside of a federal prison, these people can check that stuff out. They could have checked out Canada and found that I worked there, and that
Right.
story would have melted. That's one of the things you have to do.
Right. I got it.
However, when I came out of the prison, they send you to a halfway house, and this one was in Portland. And when I walk in there, there's 3 people I arrested.
Oh my gosh.
Now here's
Oh,
where
wow.
the unfortunately the officers you never hear of, the good ones that are going through this. And I'm not getting off base here.
No, I got you.
But because I respected the people I worked with and respected the people I arrested, instead of going around telling everybody who I was, they kind of hung around me.
Right.
Plus, there's a native aspect. There's kind of a cultural thing that goes on there when everybody's sober. And that was it. None of us seen each other sober all at the same time.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of interesting.
All right, so I want to jump in. I think I've shared this with you. The very idea of I remember the situation here. I was the worship pastor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know the story, but and Pastor Matt Miles, was playing drums, and he was leaving to go pastor a church in Coffeyville, Kansas. He is now, sidebar, in Buckner, Missouri, pastoring a church.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have anybody. My son played drums, but he was now going to Portland First Church. We had no drummer. And we knew we needed one. We had literally like a few weeks to find a guy. And you've seen the size of the worship team that we have here. I mean, it would have been just an odd thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, we just couldn't find anybody. I said, I'm going to take this ad. I'm going to go put it up at at Clackamas Community College. I had arranged with Pastor Steve at the time to be able to pay somebody so that we could have drums. And you know, Pastor Steve, that's just unheard of, right? And so we put that, just printed sign, church needs drummer, contact me kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you why I put it in Fred Meyer on their billboard. I never would have done that.
Yeah.
And yet that's the one that signed. So go from there, pick up from that spot there.
Yeah. So, of course, then we talked. You invited me to come and meet the team. And I distinctly remember.
I think it's important that we jump in.
Yeah.
When we met in the parking lot in the Starbucks where that Fred Meyer is.
Actually, it was at the Safeway.
Oh, that's
Starbucks.
right, at the Safeway. And Greg poured everything he's telling you guys. He told me within an hour of our first meeting. He says, "You need to know this is who I am."
Yeah.
And I was so appreciative. I was blown away. I was just your honesty and your openness, your willingness to be vulnerable like that. Granted, you're a big guy, but I mean, I was so impressed by that. And I think it's important that the people know that you didn't hide any of this from me. The day you met me, you shared this stuff.
Well, I think it was coming to a point where I learned how to be broken. I mean, that was something I had to learn from everything I saw and did there in that job. I could not learn how to be empty.
Right.
That was what was getting me. I could not find anything to fill me up. By this time, I was already using marijuana squibs, which is a jelly, a gummy bear form of marijuana. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I was looking down the eyes of possibly doing meth. I knew where I could get it.
We're going to 2016, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. It's kind of amazing. And so you invite me in. I meet the worship team, and I'm kind of thinking, I think I can do this. It's like, all right, this is cool. I get up there and I'm kind of hanging around Pastor Matt. Of course, I had lady issues. I just had this bitterness towards women for a while. And of course, the first person that gives me the biggest hug is Shell Watt.
Of course,
And I'm going,
Miss Shelley.
Knowing part of my story, it's like, she doesn't condemn me.
Right.
One of the biggest things that what's the word for it? I thank the sisters for is they told me, or they showed me that what Jesus is, that there's no condemnation for what I've done in the past because we're through Christ Jesus now. I mean, that was huge for me. That's one of the biggest reasons when I call a sister, I call them sister for that reason.
Yeah, you're not referring to nuns. You're talking to the women in the church, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, then Pastor Matt leaves, and it's my first weekend here. I play, and literally, then it becomes December 30th.
Yeah, it was New Year's.
Yeah, it was It was the day before New Year's, and I go out and I want to talk to a drummer who I've sat in their band with. I started to finally meet musicians. He had an electronic drum kit similar to ours here at the church, and I had a couple questions of how to program it. He told me, but while I'm in that bar, I'm having a few, and here comes a couple Canby police officers, and I was very thankful of their service. I was telling them that. I always tried to do that, just like a veteran. Thank you for your service. They showed me how much they appreciated that when I left the bar and stopped me for a DUI.
Now, this is after you had played with us that first time.
Yep.
I remember that. Yeah.
And the ironic thing is I've been stopped many, many other times, a lot more drunk than I was that night, and I was let go.
Right.
That night was different. It was, that Holy Spirit involvement type of thing. So, of course, I spend the night on a jail floor, the county jail.
Wow.
Of course, my attitude at the time, I've been through federal prison. I'm a big guy now. I shouldn't have to spend time on the county floor. I was never going to go back to prison unless it was worth it. And I'm going, this was not even worth it. And so, of course, I realized, they're going to hate me.
What, at the church?
They're going to kick me off the team. It's funny to me now, but it really wasn't at the time. It's like I kind of walked in and I grabbed my stick bag. I can't remember if I left it here, but
wasn't it at the New Year's party, the New Year's Eve party thing that we did? Yeah.
Because I think we're supposed to play, and I don't remember anything except for this moment. I walk up to Pastor Steve, told him what I did, and he goes, "Well, did you ask for forgiveness?" I go, well, yeah. Well, leave it there.
Yeah.
And leave it there. I've never thought of just leaving everything there. I mean, I did mull that over for at least 28 days.
Yeah.
Because I'm going, what just happened? Are they actually accepting me for what I did in the past?
Yeah.
Because everybody else isn't. Am I, finally home? Well, I decided to quit drinking on the 28th of January of 2017. And that's when I also decided to give my life over to Jesus.
Right.
All of this anxiety, worry, hatred, depression, I had deep depression, all this just, people say, oh yeah, that really happened. No, that really happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I go around professing it, because nothing else works or will work. So don't cry, because you don't make me cry.
Sorry, man. I know it's teary. We're both crying in here. It's like I remember it. Maybe if I pick my nose, people will stop crying. But I remember the night vividly. I vividly remember because Pastor Steve came up and talked to me, and he says, "Has Brother Greg talked to you?" And I can't remember if you had told me at that point or not. And he told me about it, and not that that's not, I don't think that's out of character for Pastor Steve to do that. I think that's in his character to do that.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking that I wasn't worried that we were going to lose a drummer or I was going to have to find a drummer or anything. I just genuinely liked you. You know what I mean? And you fit. And the worship team liked you. Everybody, and I was just like, there was something you could just sense the power of God in that whole scenario. You really could. And I remember even at the time thinking about it and thinking that, I learned a lot from Pastor Steve and his ministry. It has defined a lot of who I am as a minister. It most certainly has. That to me was one of his shining moments in the 10 years I served with him. I think if you had to ask me what's the biggest moment, it would be that one where he looked at you and said, look, are you done with that? Because I know how he can be like that. Are you finished? Are you stopping? Are you done? Are you leaving that there? Then don't pick it up again. Just leave it there. And from that, go from there.
Yeah. I was 99.9% convinced at that point. I should back up just a little bit. Well, it was around this time. I can't remember if it was January or February when this happened, but you and I were with Pastor Matt. This had to have been before Pastor Matt left then, so it had to have been in December. We all went to a local cafe here in Molalla, and when Nito was there, I remember that too.
Yeah.
Another guy that goes to our church here, and you asked me if I still carried, and I said no. I just kind of said because Brother Brett was with us, and he was
we were at
talking about,
Cindy's.
and it dawned on me, oh, he was a former officer.
Yeah.
going-
Let's tell people, there are
Yeah.
people who may not know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The bass player on the worship team is a guy named Brett Frauendiener, who was also at the time a sheriff's deputy, right?
Yeah.
Was he a deputy or was he
He was a deputy, yeah.
Right. Now, he is not anymore. He has since left that. But at the time, he was. And, here you are on the worship team together with him. And I, of course, knew that. And I knew both of you. And I had told you about that. So here we are at Cindy's, and we're having breakfast together. I remember.
It just didn't sink into me that, again, I go back to the past and I'm going, oh, gosh, this guy's going to find out what I did. And, he's no way it's going to work out because, you betrayed the brotherhood and stuff. And I think it was you that encouraged to just talk to him.
Mm-hmm. I
And
did tell you
so
that.
I planned to go to Guitar Center with him, and I told him, he said, oh, it's all good. You're still a brother.
Yeah. And
That's one of your what moments.
That's right. He had recognized you. Did he not?
Well, we still don't remember what, but we think we were on the same search warrant because remember, it was on the drug team. Part of that is Deschutes County. He was a Deschutes County deputy then.
Wow.
He since then moved over here and was working for Multnomah County, but we think we crossed paths at one point or another.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from at that point, he kind of became a discipler of yours.
Yeah, exactly what he did. Yeah, yeah. We would
I
meet
love that.
every week. Yeah.
I'm gonna cry again.
Well,
was
no, I
awesome.
actually miss that sometimes. We were talking about that. I miss just meeting all the time. So yeah, I fast forward. I get to about April, and God puts. I started really clearly understanding who God was and Him talking to me. And He clearly puts this thought in my mind to attend Bible college and to be more available for this church.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, well, how do I do that? And he goes, well, darkness has no fellowship with light. I'm going, what? I did not give up the cigarettes yet.
Oh, okay.
I'd still been smoking. And so I was literally reading in Jeremiah, I think it was then, and then I looked down and I happened to catch how Jeremiah described a adulteress and how disgusting it was and stuff. And I realized the cigarettes were, I was committing this adultery.
Mm-hmm.
The next day I'm finding myself in 1 John. I'm not intentionally looking for this.
Right, right.
Darkness has no fellowship with the light. So basically, July, I gave up the cigarettes. And then that's when the Holy Spirit started working with me, and I got into Nazarene Bible College.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only really thinking of going to college because I heard Pastor Ryan, who was, of course, another pastor that had been here with us and is down in the Medford area now. And I overheard him talking about Bible college. And I was going, man, I'd really like to understand the Old Testament more. I've been in that Bible college almost 2 years. I'm still trying to figure out the Old Testament.
Hey, I've
I'm
been a
understanding
minister
better.
for 20. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I'm getting better at that, though. I'm starting to understand it. But yeah, and then there's Dr. Gary Haynes. I
Oh
believe
yeah,
his name.
he was an instructor of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always calls
Yeah.
almost every class.
Yep.
And I always catch him on
He was your
voicemail.
advisor.
No, well, I guess that's what you call
Yeah,
it.
they give you an advisor and they call you, quarterly, and
Yeah.
Dr. Haynes will talk to you for an hour if you want.
Yeah.
it was,
Well,
it's
see,
great.
I always catch his voicemails. I've never only talked to him but once.
Right.
And that was when I first got into the school. And he goes, well, you need to do this so you can be prepared to get your district license. And go, whoa, wait a minute. What are you talking about? Wait. So I realized I started giving things up. I loved those drums so much because they've been there for the whole time. And I go, I got to give this up to you, God. If I never play a single day, if I never have another single note that I hit, let me be used for your glory. I had to do that with relationships too.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, for the last 2 years of not dating, I had to do that with relationships.
Right.
I go, if I'm never with somebody ever again, let me be used for your glory.
Right.
Sure, I would like to go on a date or something, but if I don't, it's the same thing right now. If I never get back up on that stage, it's the way it has to be.
Right.
And I get joy from that.
Yeah.
Through I've been starting to understand the joy through the sufferings, that kind of thing. So, I felt prompted to come in and talk to the board at that time to ask if I may have a local license, and of course was approved, and went through that process, and then went through the interview process of for the district license, and that was unanimous, and here I am today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it's the enemy knows how to push my buttons. Do I think he'll ever give up? No, but Jesus won't either.
That's right.
And so everything that he comes at me with, I attack with scripture.
Yeah.
And in fact, the very day before the district license, I've been struggling at work. I've got these new shoes to help with my leg pain and stuff like that. And so I'm researching different things. I know people use the CBD creams that are THC free and stuff. I was kind of looking at that. Satan puts a thought in my head just like this. Well, why don't you just go buy a squib? It's only $20. You can have that right now.
Right.
I said, no. I'm not going to put an idol before my God.
Right.
And so literally the next day I knew. See, that's the thing. When you get to know Jesus more, it puts Satan more in the light, and you realize
It exposes.
that
That's exactly
you
right.
realize that what he's trying to do, he's trying to pick up the heat because something's coming the next day.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I get this email. Actually, it was in the sanctuary, and Sister Linda Fender comes up, well, congratulations. I'm going, on what?
Right.
Because she's kind of into the district,
Yeah.
so
She sits on the district advisory
knew
board,
before I
right,
did,
right.
and sends this email to me. I'm going, it's sort of like it's sort of like Keanu Reeves. No way.
Right.
No way.
Way.
It's sort of like you're what?
Right.
And so
Right.
I was just totally blown away. And since then, I keep committing to God. Well, what do you want me to do? over the course of time, probably since the end of 2017 up until this COVID incident, I'd worked with Celebrate Recovery. This particular one was based over at Foothills.
Yeah, Foothills,
Yeah.
if you don't know, is another one of the bigger churches in Malala here,
Yeah,
and they host the Celebrate Recovery class.
yeah. And I completely recommend that to people, but I felt a pulling towards the Spanish ministry here. And when they first were able to do their first service back after the COVID thing, they basically asked, or Pastor Roxana asked if I could play that night.
Play drums.
Yeah, and right there and then I just knew it. Pastor Francisco talked with me recently about how he wants to know the town more and how I know the town. He doesn't know the town as well. I go, man, just like when I was at the police department, I could be the bridge. So it's like I'm constantly trying to be in that moment of where God wants me to be, as well as still try to play the drums and do college and all this other stuff.
And work for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't stopped working ever since the start. In fact, we've been doing overtime now last 3 weeks.
What do you do now? Tell the people what your employer is.
It's a place called Packaging Resources, and we have all different types of corrugate and foam products that we basically make for a lot of medical companies,
Right.
dental companies, and we make the product that they package their product in.
Got it.
And these big wood crates that they ship ultrasound machines in overseas. Just a ton of different stuff.
A couple of questions, and I want to get. It's ironic you mentioned the CBD cream.
Yeah.
Chris Wallace, our friend and our brother from South Florida, is asking, what do you have to say about people being happy about the legalization of marijuana? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on it are it's hard because I know exactly what pain is. I've dealt with it a lot, physical pain. Now, the CBD creams can work. I know people that have tried to use the creams and they tried up the THC level. Here's the deal. Anything that takes you away from your mindset and frame with God is an idol. You know, just anything. The scriptures, Jesus said to love him with all your heart, soul, and spirit, and your mind. So if something's messing with your mind, you got to look at that and what it's doing.
Right.
And sometimes that does take suffering. I mean, I'm not saying that lightly. I know a couple sisters, including my own daughter, who deal with fibromyalgia, one of the worst pains you could deal with. So it's not easy just to say that, knowing they're under suffer. But, you know, I've seen a couple also really godly sisters come up and say, hey, I just need some prayer. I'm really having a bad day. And that's almost more exciting to me than them being healed, because they're not saying, no, this ain't defeating me. My God's powerful. Be in me and be in this season with me.
We lost the light on the thing. I wonder if it's in a timer battery. I don't know. It's no big deal. It's okay.
What is that?
This controls this is a remote control that controls the sign behind you.
Oh,
So we don't have
oh.
cables hanging down. There's another question. Debbie Stebbin would like to know if God removed all cravings and temptations from you.
Yeah, basically, here's how what happens is Satan still tries to tempt me. Where people get tripped up, and including myself once in a while, is you think you're bad because that thought comes in the mind. No, if Satan puts that thought there, that's one thing. It's your action upon it. So I believe that I'm allowed to have scripture to fight against these things. Like 1 Corinthians 10:13 is always my favorite one, you know, that no temptation has seized me, only was common to man.
Right.
And God always provides a way out. But it also says, so you can, some scriptures say to endure it, some say to stand up under it. So it says you might be going through the temptation, but that doesn't mean that you crave it or whatever. It's,
Right.
You know.
We were in ministry. You had mentioned Roswell, New Mexico. I was the worship pastor there for a year, and we met. There was a couple there, Brian and Priscilla James, who came from a drug culture, came from a meth culture. Brian will look you in the eye today. He's now a minister of the gospel and tell you that God healed him, that God took those things from him, took the cravings away. When you and if you know anything about meth, it is one of the most addictive drugs.
Yeah.
It's very hard to beat that. And he's had complete victory. He gives all the glory to God. The reason I'm bringing this up is because he would tell you, no, I'm still tempted. You know, I am still tempted. Jesus was tempted in every way, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to be tempted. So, Debbie, I think the answer to your question is, no, God doesn't remove that temptation, you know, but because you're going to be tempted. But the craving, I think, God can remove those things.
Yeah.
God can take that to where we look at it and now we're disgusted by it. When I think of the guy I used to be, and when I think of the things that in my younger days, before I was a Christian, the things that used to appeal to my flesh, and when I responded to those things and when I gave in to those things, those thoughts disgust me now. And it's not the thoughts that disgust me as much as it is that the nature of the person that I was that would do those things. That's what disgusts me. That's what I mean, I can't believe I was that guy. I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
To me, that's why, and there's so much love. You need to go back afterward and
Oh,
read
yeah,
all
I'll have
these
to go
comments
through it.
because there's so much love that's pouring your way. And I do want you to read them and be, because your testimony is so super powerful. 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and now you're a pastor with a district license, and God's going to use you and gives you vision, and you have dreams, and what I think is cool is God keeps changing them. You know, it's like, well, it's going to be this, it's going to be this, and when I say changing them, not eliminating them.
It's seasons.
It's a season, right? And so now God's put it heavy on your heart to really assist in the growth of Spanish ministries. And so the interesting thing is how God is going to use that. I look forward to seeing that.
I think what's awesome is you know, when you're a bunch of godly, the Church of God, not just the building, the Church of God, because I'd of course, before I even started talking to people publicly about this, I talked to the ministry leader of Celebrate Recovery, and I just, that's awesome the way God's going to use you in this and everything like that, and still wants to meet for coffee, and that means a lot to me because this guy's story is also powerful.
Sure.
I don't want to tell him for him. I can. He's allowed me to do that, but I hope to have him in here.
Let's get him in. You are welcome to come in here and host this, and you can interview the guy. That'd be great. I'd be happy to do that. I want to let some other people know some more things you may or may not know about Greg. He's not just a pastor. He's also a board member. And what you may or may not know, as I recall, and I don't remember the exact, that you were among the highest vote getters amongst the church for people to sit on the board. And I've been asked the question a few times that now that you're a pastor, can you still sit on the board? And the answer is yes, as long as you're not a paid staff person, you can hold a board position. But even in a unique scenario like this with the pandemic, you were a carryover, so you would be able to potentially finish your term, those kind of things. If ever you're a paid staff person, then you can't sit on the board. But so board, he's a staff member, he's a board member, he's a minister of the gospel. He's got his district license. He's a drummer on the worship team. But the best thing about you is in my opinion, your openness to be vulnerable, to allow your life to be an open book, to give God the glory for it, I mean, this is going to lose everything for the people watching or listening, but a couple years ago when we did the program, and I remember the scene, the homeless scene, when Carla, my wife, is singing over the fire pit thing, you know, and the scene is on the streets of any city where you see homeless people, and Greg comes walking out as a drunk, you know, stumbling into the part, and it was so real, it was so convincing. Carla had to really fight. She would tell me every time Greg walks out there, I have to fight back the tears to get through her song. And it's just such an impactful testimony. And every time I think of that, I mean, I don't associate you like that, but I think that, man, the power of God who can take somebody, been in prison, been a convict, right? I mean, been in law enforcement, been an alcoholic, been an abuser of drugs. And God's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I got a plan for him, right? I don't care. I don't care who he used to be. This is who he is now. And to see what God is going to do in your life, and to have seen some of it firsthand, and to be able to partner that, to be the pastor that that presented you with your first local minister's license and your district license. And gosh, I certainly hope I'm the pastor when it comes time for your ordination. It's such an exciting thing. I'm so proud of you. You know, you're my brother, you're my peer, and I can't wait to see what God does with your life and in your ministry. And you know what? I love, like, even from the standpoint of, you know, you said loneliness. From that standpoint of, I'd like to go on a date. Well, now I know how to pray for you, that God brings a godly woman into your life and those kind of things.
I know, believe me, I was bummed when they canceled the women's ministries retreat.
But for those of you who don't know, our worship team has been the worship team that has led the worship for like 3 out of the past 4 women's retreats, and I think two of the 3 were here. We hosted them, and isn't that right?
Well, I was only played with 2, and the last one was here. Yeah.
And the other one was at Salem
first. Yeah.
But we did another one, I think, a year or 2 before that.
Yeah, before I was
here.
Yeah.
And so I see it, Marcus. And so that's a cool thing. Yeah. So we need to be praying God brings Greg a godly woman.
And then, of course, the first year I'm playing with you there, it's like I'm sick as a dog, and he pulls me out to tell everybody about my testimony. I'm going, just barely holding it together. Yes. I don't know what I had, the flu or something.
I'm trying to go through some of the comments. Melody writes, it's good for us to remember where we have been so we can use our testimony to show others. It doesn't matter what you've done. Nothing is so bad that God won't love you. People without hope. Yeah, certainly. Amen, Melody. Absolutely. And Melody, we've been praying for you. Melody, as you know, just lost her husband.
Yes.
And so, Melody, we cover you in prayer, and we appreciate your being here. I hope you enjoyed tonight's testimony. Melody has another question. She wants to know, are you able to vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you didn't lose that. So that's good. And Chris Wallace is back. He had to pop out for a few minutes. Christine Jones, God can make a masterpiece from our shattered pieces. Amen. Well, Greg, you got anything else you want to add? I'm going to ask you to close us in prayer. Okay.
One of the things I like to say is that Humpty Dumpty falls off a shelf and breaks, right? But instead of like people putting him back together, God put him back together again. Yeah. The king sent his men to put me back together again. So.
I love it. That's a great thing. Yeah. If you missed a couple weeks ago, Pastor Greg preached a sermon on our Saturday night service. When are you scheduled to do that again?
Not the 4th, because we're not having one on this Saturday.
Right.
It'll be the next Saturday after, whatever day that is.
So let's bring up our calendar and see what that is, said the man who can't read.
The
11th.
If my math is correct, that should be the 11th.
Yeah, so July 11th, Pastor Greg will be preaching on our live stream. You can find that on YouTube. It was called Malala Church. It's the same. So if you were a subscriber there, you can still see it there. But if you want to go on now, the name of that is now the Monaz Media Network. It was Monaz Church. It's now Monaz Media Network. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to use primarily YouTube as the hub for things like this webcast or whatever you want to call it. Additionally, all of our sermons, our Spanish ministry sermon is there. Pastor Greg, Pastor Daniel, and Mike Keller share the preaching responsibilities that we do on Saturday nights. But you can also see Greg playing drums with the worship team on Friday nights, and of course Sunday mornings with the worship team. And so Mike Keller, or Chris Wallace says, get Mike Keller on the case. Take him hunting for good Christian frontier woman. Okay, well, there we go. That's what we'll do.
Someone just set the alarm on us.
Oh, okay. You know how to take care of that?
Yep.
Yeah, so my guess is Shelly and her dance team left. They probably thought, it's 8:30. There's no way that they're still here. And so
it's 8:30?
They did. No, why are you sorry, man? We didn't lose anybody. We had good numbers the whole time. And so it's been an amazing hour and a half. It went by. I mean, I knew the story. I didn't know all the detail. You know, you filled in some of the detail. And so it was great to be a part of that. So, Brother Greg, what I'm going to ask you to do is pray us out. Then we'll tell everybody to go tell somebody about Jesus. And we'll look into, I guess that's the joint camera up there. So we'll look at that when we do it. And then Marcus will close us out with the outro. Melody is saying that she returns to work tomorrow while still planning Rich's service for July 18th. Please keep praying. Absolutely, Miss Melody. And you let us know if there's anything that your church family here in Malala, Oregon can do. Chris Wallace says his mom's birthday is July 18th. We'll be wishing her a happy birthday as well. And So, Brother Greg, if you'd close us in prayer, and then Marcus, you can get the outro ready, and then we'll do our thing.
All righty. Lord Jesus, thank you for being present with us today, and for the work you've done in my life, but also the people that you've brought into my life to get to this point. I know it's only you that has saved me, and it's by your grace. I praise you, God, that there's people out there listening, and I hope it's impactful, as this is only for your glory. It is not for mine at all, but for your glory. Lord, your word says that people, if they see him, they believe, but to believe in him without seeing him, then they receive a blessing. And I ask that a blessing is received by anybody who really wants to know you and to continue to walk with you. I pray for all our sisters and brothers that are going through the loss of family members or certain pains in their life, financial troubles, fear. I pray that you come over all of them. And I praise you, God, for being able to have a space to be able to do this. And I thank you, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in to the newly christened Monaz Media Network studio. I don't know what else to call it, so that's what we'll call it. There's just, I don't know. That's what we'll call it for right now. Carla is sorry she couldn't be with us. We can be praying for Carla. Carla's having a real hard time sleeping at night. I think it's an adjustment with her CPAP. I don't know what it is, but she would appreciate our prayers. So if we could be praying for her, if the people listening, if you'd be praying for that. Guys, listen to me. Pastor Daniel and I had a conversation before we go, and we're just getting ready to go here, that says this. When we tell somebody at the end of a service to go tell somebody about Jesus, of course we mean to go out and share the gospel. Of course we mean to go share your testimony, go tell people, offer to pray for it. That's part of it. I want to emphasize to you, sharing these videos, sharing these live streams, sharing our ministries on your social media pages is telling somebody about Jesus. It's the best way you can do that right now, because we can't all get out and do that. COVID-19, the pandemic, has a lot of things shut down still, and we're not able to do that. So I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, share these videos. It is one of your best tools to tell somebody about Jesus. I mean, think about it. In the time that we started this pandemic to right now, here we are still in the midst of it. We've built a studio for the sole purpose of getting this kind of a message out there. So let's not make these efforts in vain. The board trusted the vision. They put the finances to it. We've had people donate cameras. We've had people pay for these microphones. We've got Marcus tirelessly here every night to make sure that we have some form of communication with each other in sharing the gospel. But if you don't share it, we're missing out. You're missing out. I'm missing out. Brother Greg's testimony is missing out. People need to hear this testimony, right? They need to hear that there's redemption for them. And if we don't share this video, fewer people, there's going to be somebody on your Facebook page, somebody in your sphere of influence who you think would never watch this, who's going to call you and say, my life has changed because you shared that video. So don't let me get on to you just because I'm a pastor, and you guys know I will get on to you. I mean, it is what it is. Share these videos. It is your way to tell somebody about Jesus. So Brother Greg, look at that camera right there. And on 3, 2, 1, go tell somebody about Jesus. God bless you. You are dismissed. Love you guys. Thank you, Brother Greg.
Thank you. Love you too.